The Seed Keeper's Secret: How $0 garden waste becomes $3.00 month in your shed. Most backyard farmers focus on what grows above the soil. Seeds, shoots, flowers, fruit. That's where the visible business is. But there's a parallel economy happening underneath, in the dark, where nobody's watching, and it's generating $3 grand a month for people who figured it out first. The real secret isn't the crops. It's what you do with what's left behind after the harvest. By the time we're done here, you'll understand exactly why waste from your kitchen and garden is worth more than the vegetables themselves, and how you can capture that value without starting a composting company. Stay with me, because at the very end, I'm going to show you the one move that transforms piles of rotting scraps into a completely separate income stream that runs itself. If you're new here at Acre and Earn, subscribe now. We find the backyard income streams most people walk past every single day. And hey, drop a comment below. Have you ever tried composting, or does it feel like too much work to even consider? I genuinely like to know what's holding people back. Here's something most gardeners miss. They treat the byproduct of their garden as a disposal problem, not an asset. Dead leaves get bagged, plant stems go to the curb, kitchen scraps fill up the trash bin. None of that waste is being counted. None of it has a price tag attached. And yet, every single pound of it has buyers with cash ready to spend. Wait. This part matters. Before we go further, I need to be clear about something. The complete guide to building a profitable waste-to-income system is available in the description and pinned comment below. That guide walks you through the exact mechanisms of how to value different types of organic matter, calculate your yield per square foot, and structure pricing so you're not just breaking even. It goes deep into the patterns that separate the people making real money from the ones who keep composting as a hobby. If you want to understand the architecture behind this, grab that resource. The conventional composting story goes like this. You save your vegetable scraps. You layer them with leaves. You wait months. Eventually, brown material appears. You spread it on your garden. Costs nothing. Helps your plants. Reduces waste. It's a nice story. It's also incomplete. The missing piece is velocity. Most home gardeners compost on their own timescale, which is slow. They're working with whatever scraps naturally accumulate in their kitchen. Maybe 3 pounds a week, maybe less. That creates a bottleneck. You can't generate enough finished product to have anything substantial to sell. But what if you weren't limited to your own scraps? Coffee shops throw out grounds by the pound every single day. Restaurants discard vegetable trimmings that are perfectly suited for compost. Grocery stores have produce that's past prime but structurally sound. Most of this material goes to a landfill or into a dumpster. It's free. Nobody's competing for it. And it's all organic carbon waiting to be transformed into something a greenhouse nursery will pay genuine money to acquire. One person in Portland, I won't name them because they've been quiet about this, is collecting pre-sorted food waste from 7 restaurants within a mile of their home. Not negotiated contracts, not formal arrangements, just a standing arrangement where the restaurant manager sets aside buckets of vegetable scraps and this person picks them up twice a week. They're processing approximately 40 pounds of raw material weekly into what will eventually be premium casting material. 40 pounds weekly sounds small until you do the math. That's roughly 400 pounds per quarter. A finished compost pile loses about half its weight through moisture evaporation and decomposition. So 400 pounds of incoming material yields somewhere around 200 pounds of finished product per quarter. At current market rates for premium finished compost, and I'm talking restaurant grade, not the stuff in bags at big box stores, you're looking at wholesale prices between $3 and $6 per pound. That's a range of $600 to $1,200 per quarter, just from rescued food waste that was going to be garbage anyway. The real money, though, doesn't come from selling finished compost by weight to landscape companies, though that's honest work. It comes from what grows inside the compost itself, and what your customers are actually buying when they think they're buying compost. Finished compost is a housing complex for microorganisms, bacteria, fungi, protozoa, arthropods, the entire living network that makes soil fertile. When a serious gardener or a greenhouse operator buys premium compost, they're not really buying decomposed plant matter. They're buying the biological activity, the fertility, the life contained in it. And some of that life can be harvested separately, earthworms, for instance. A mature compost pile becomes a breeding ground for red wigglers and other composting species. You can harvest these worms and sell them at $15 to $40 per pound to people starting their own vermicompost systems. A single good bin can hold thousands of worms. You're not depleting your supply by harvesting some, You're just skimming off the excess while the colony keeps multiplying on its own. Additionally, the liquid that drains from an active compost pile, called compost tea or leachate, concentrates nutrients and microbial populations into a drinkable form for plants. It sells. Bottled and labeled properly, premium compost tea moves at $10 to $25 per gallon at farmers markets and to small nurseries that want to market organic inputs. So now your waste collection system produces 3 revenue streams instead of 1. The finished compost itself, the worms living inside it, the liquid running out the bottom. 1 shed, 1 system, 3 separate products, all profitable. The scale that works best for this isn't enormous. You don't need an acre or a commercial license to operate where most backyard farmers currently operate. A 10 by 12 shed is sufficient space. Stacked bins, proper drainage management, temperature monitoring, these are solvable problems with cheap solutions. Most people never start because they see composting as charity or environmentalism, a good deed toward the planet. That's why it stays small. But when you reframe waste as raw material, when you understand there are actual buyers with actual money waiting for what you can process, suddenly the economics flip. You're not saving the planet and hoping to break even. You're running a small factory that happens to have environmental benefits as a side effect. The people making real money from this have already moved past the question of whether it's worth doing. They're solving the next problem, scaling the collection, managing the throughput, and building distribution channels, so they're not making individual sales to individual gardeners. That's where the second income stream becomes critical, the worms themselves. Red wigglers, the composting species, sell for $20 to $40 a pound to people starting their own bins. You're not just selling the output, you're selling the machinery that makes the output. A customer buys a pound of your breeding stock, takes them home, feeds them kitchen scraps, and within months, they've got their own colony. Some of them will circle back and buy your finished castings instead of making their own. Others become competitors. Most simply become people who understand the value of what you're doing. The third revenue line is worm tea. That's the liquid that drains from the bottom of an active bin, water that's passed through the castings and picked up all the microbial life. $10 to $25 a gallon at farmers markets. Gardeners spray it on their plants. Orchards use it bulk. Indoor growers dose their hydroponic systems with it. 1 setup, 3 products. The worms multiply themselves. You feed them garbage. The only thing that costs money is the initial colony, and depending on your scale, that's $50 to $200. The catch is front-loaded patience. Your first harvest takes 3 to 4 months. The bins need consistent moisture and temperature. Too wet and they rot. Too hot and they suffocate. Too cold and they stop working. But once established, a 2,000 worm colony produces roughly 7 pounds of castings monthly, and the system nearly runs itself. Who actually buys at scale? Organic nurseries. Boutique soil blenders who formulate custom mixes for high-end landscapers, vineyard consultants, orchards, and right now, the fastest-growing segment, indoor growers, commercial operations that cultivate microgreens, specialty lettuce, medicinal herbs under controlled light. They treat soil biology like a controlled variable in an experiment. They don't negotiate on price, because the difference between mediocre castings and premium castings can swing their harvest yield by 10, 15, sometimes 20%. A 20% improvement in yield on a crop worth $50,000 is $10,000 they're willing to protect. They'll pay premium prices. Before we continue, keep this in mind for a second. This entire income stream, the mechanisms, the buyer network, the scaling strategies, the exact timing for harvesting and storage, that's all mapped out in our complete guide available in the description and pinned right at the top of the comments. The guide goes deep on worm-specific protocols, pricing psychology, and how to build recurring customers instead of one-off sales. It's a paid resource because it contains actual implementation templates, not theory. That's the worm game. Now let's look at what happens when you move the operation above ground and into actual plants. The second craft on this list is mushroom cultivation, specifically gourmet mushrooms, oysters, shiitake, lion's mane, wine caps, not the button mushrooms you find in supermarkets. Those are commodity crops with razor-thin margins. Gourmet varieties move for $12 to $18 a pound at farmers markets when buttons sell for $3 or $4. A mushroom operation scales differently than worms. Instead of bins, you're managing logs or straw blocks. Instead of months, you're looking at cycles that run 8 to 12 weeks from inoculation to harvest. Here's the money part. A 10 by 10 shed with proper shelving can hold roughly 60 to 80 straw blocks in production rotation. Each block yields 1 to 2 pounds of mushrooms per fruiting flush. 4 flushes per year means 200 to 300 pounds annually. At an average wholesale price of $8 per pound to restaurants or retail partners, or $15 at retail directly to consumers, you're looking at $1,600 to $4,500 per year from a single 10 by 10 space. The setup cost is legitimate but manageable. Shelving, misting system, a way to maintain humidity and temperature, maybe $800 to $1,500 total. Spawn and substrate run about $2 per block, and you get 1 to 3 production cycles before you need to replace the block. The barrier isn't money, it's knowledge and consistency. Mushrooms need specific humidity, specific temperature ranges, specific lighting. Get any of those wrong and the entire block gets colonized by contamination instead of mushroom mycelium. A batch can fail in a week if you're careless. But here's the part that separates the successful growers from the hobbyists. They don't treat it as random. They track conditions obsessively. They keep records. They know within a degree where their shed sits at 3 in the morning, and they know which supplier's spawn is most reliable. One grower in Connecticut sells to 12 restaurants in a 30-mile radius. She's moved 3 times now because each operation outgrows its space. She started in a corner of a basement. Now she's in a rented warehouse, still keeping the backyard operation as a side revenue stream. Her current monthly take is around $6,000 from mushrooms alone. That's the profile that actually makes sustainable money. Not a hobby that generates a few $100s. A business that treats every variable as something that can be measured, improved, and replicated. Before we continue, I need to pause here because what happens next separates the people who dabble from the people who actually build something. You've heard about worm castings. You've seen what mushrooms can do. But there's a third income stream that most backyard operators miss entirely, and it's the one that bridges the gap between seasonal crops and year-round cash flow. If you want to understand the full mechanics of how these 3 systems work together, how to time them, what to invest in first, and which mistakes will cost you actual money, I've put together a complete guide in the description and pinned comment. It covers the financial models, the seasonal calendar, the supplier lists, everything. It's the depth you won't find anywhere else on this topic. Now, the third system is perennial herbs and specialty lavender. Not the decorative kind you see in garden centers. The culinary and medicinal varieties that restaurants, tea distributors, and wellness brands will buy directly from you. Here's why this works when other backyard crops don't. Lavender lives for 10 to 15 years. You plant it once, you harvest it twice a year, sometimes 3 times if you're aggressive with the pruning. After the first year of establishment, your labor input drops by 70% compared to annual crops. And the profit margin is remarkable. A single mature lavender plant produces somewhere between 600 and 1,000 stem bundles per season. At farmers markets, dried lavender bundles sell for anywhere from $12 to $18. Wholesale to boutique shops runs $8 to $12 per bundle. Do the math. One plant at a conservative estimate yields $4,500 annually. A backyard can hold 60 to 80 plants in the space of a small garden bed. Your first year setup cost is around $200 to $400. Soil, seeds, maybe a drip irrigation line. The catch is patience again. That first year, you're not harvesting much. You're letting the plant establish its root system. Most people quit before that payoff happens. They see bare soil and assume failure. The people who stay, who let those plants mature through a full winter, they're the ones waking up in year 2 with a crop that essentially grows itself. But here's where the real money reveals itself. Lavender isn't just a summer thing anymore. Culinary lavender, the edible grade, is becoming a staple in farm-to-table kitchens. Lavender honey, lavender-infused oils, lavender simple syrup. A restaurant chef will pay premium prices for bundles that are clean, properly dried, and consistent. Consistency is the key word. That means you harvest on a schedule, you dry properly, you bundle uniformly, you deliver on time. Sounds like business, because it is business. A small-scale culinary lavender operation, 30 to 40 plants dedicated just to restaurants, can generate $2,000 to $3,000 monthly during the flush seasons, and $500 to $800 in the slower months. That's a real, measurable income stream from a corner of your property that most neighborhoods don't even have zoning restrictions against. The 3 systems, worm castings, gourmet mushrooms, and culinary lavender, don't compete for the same resources or the same time. Worms thrive in darkness. Mushrooms need carefully controlled humidity in a confined space. Lavender demands sun and excellent drainage. Each one occupies a different microclimate in your property. Each one harvests on its own calendar. A smart operator runs all three simultaneously, which means there's almost always something ready to sell in any given month. That's when the math becomes genuinely compelling. A single grower with less than 200 square feet of usable space, operating out of a residential garage and a corner garden bed, can generate between $3,000 and $5,000 monthly once all three systems mature, not in year one. But by year two and beyond, when the lavender is producing and the mushroom room has found its rhythm and the worm bins have stabilized, the cash flow becomes predictable. That's the transformation nobody prepares you for. This is the secret I promised you at the beginning. Not the individual crops, not the individual prices or the setup costs, or even the timeline. The real secret is simpler and far more powerful than any single income stream. It's this. Your waste stream is your inventory. Every kitchen scrap, every cardboard box, every fallen leaf, every stem that gets pruned off, none of that has to leave your property. It becomes the raw material that feeds the system that feeds your income. 100 years ago, this wasn't a revelation. It was basic common sense. A household that threw away food was a household that was throwing away money. The difference now is that people will actually pay you for having figured out what their grandparents knew instinctively. The market has returned. The craft never really left. It just waited. What makes this sustainable isn't the novelty, it's the compounding. Your first year is slow. You're learning. You're building. Your first worm bin produces maybe 70 pounds of castings in those first 8 months. Your first mushroom room might yield 30 pounds. Your first lavender stand at the market moves 12 bundles. That's real money, maybe $400 or $500 total. It feels small against the setup cost, but in year two, you're not starting from zero. The worms have reproduced. The mushroom room is dialed in. The lavender plants have matured. You add a second bin because now you understand the work. You expand the mushroom footprint. You have more plants producing simultaneously. The second year produces 2 or 3 times the income of the first. Year 3 is better still, and at no point do you need to buy more land, hire employees, or acquire expensive equipment. That's the actual compound interest of a backyard system. It builds on itself. One operator I know kept meticulous records for 3 years. First year, $500 total. Second year, $1,800. Third year, $4,200. By year 4, she wasn't even expanding anymore. She just optimized the systems she had. She was clearing just over $5,000 per month, consistently. She has a day job. She spends maybe 8 to 10 hours weekly on the backyard operation. She's not famous. Nobody knows her name, and her backyard is paying her mortgage. That's not luck. That's not a secret formula or a hidden technique. That's what happens when you understand that waste is a renewable resource, and when you have the patience to let 3 different biological systems do the work for you. Here's what you need to do this week. Pick one. Not all 3. 1. The worm bin, if you want to start with something that fits in a garage and costs almost nothing. The mushroom room, if you have a sheltered space and you want the fastest initial return. The lavender, if you have sun exposure and patience. Start that one. Get it right. Let it produce. Then add the second. Then the third. Your backyard isn't a garden. Not anymore. It's a business that hasn't opened yet. The only reason it isn't generating $3,000 a month right now is that you haven't given it permission to. Thank you for staying with me through this entire breakdown. If this approach resonates with you, please hit that subscribe button and turn on your notifications so you never miss a new video on backyard income systems. And if you've tried any of these 3 methods, worms, mushrooms, or lavender, I'd genuinely love to hear how it went. Drop a comment below and share your result. We're building a community of people who actually understand that passive income starts in your own backyard.